do what you need to do to protect our neighbors downstream. Now, I hear some negative things every now and then about them, but let me tell you what, that's quite a commitment from that fella. And the thing he said to me has said over and over and over again is we want to be good neighbors. So I think we need to bear that in mind, and if you get a chance, you see any of those people out there, can try and thank them, because they were big in fighting the fire and giving the water they did. And Freddie said, all I wanted to do was just make sure we protected the people that were downstream from us. And I've got a letter here from the New Mexico Foundation for Open Government. This is not a government entity, and I've got some curiosity about where they get their funding and all of that, but that's a subject for another time. But apparently one of our citizens, who has been beating this pretty rapidly, wrote a letter to them, and they sent a letter to me dated July the 2nd. And I'll read the first sentence. Dear Mayor Alburn, I'm writing to express our concern that the village of Ruidoso may be limiting vital public oversight of its actions by using resolutions to amend ordinances. Ms. Lee got 3 opinions. And we even paid for this person to get 1. The village did, which I think sets a bad precedent. But anyway, Mr. Bryant, if you've got just a second to explain the situation, I would appreciate it.
Mr. Mayor and members of the council and ladies and gentlemen, the root question is, can you amend an ordinance with a resolution? And I've been provided with a copy of the letter from FOG that is signed, I think it's by their executive director, Ms. Gwyneth Dolan. And Ms. Dolan quotes a municipal league manual that defines the rule of thumb, if you will, about ordinances and resolutions. And the rule of thumb is, if you made it an ordinance, you can't change it unless you do it by an ordinance. That's the ordinary rule. But it's a little bit like the mayor's discussion earlier about the First Amendment. Nobody can abridge my First Amendment right to say what I think and feel. But if I'm in this room at 3:20 p.m. on Tuesday, July the 10th, and I shout fire, and there's no fire, and everybody gets up and starts to run out the door, and Miss Reed is trampled and dies because of the trampling, I have committed homicide, and that speech is not protected. And so the point that I want to make is, yes, there's black letter law. Thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt not kill. Americans have the right to keep and bear arms. But there's also the detail and the specifics of every factual circumstance that we deal with in life. And like other subjects, this subject of resolution versus ordinance doesn't end with the black letter law statement. One of the biggest complaints that I've dealt with in my time as a public entity lawyer in New Mexico is, why is government so slow? Why are you so inefficient? Why can't you guys move fast? Why can't you get things done? Why can't you fix things faster? Well, one of the ways, one of the tools that we're given is we have the ability in our law to delegate authority. And for example, our water rates ordinance could contain a delegation clause that says the county manager is hereby empowered on an annual basis to adjust water rates so as to cover the then current operating costs of the water department and to prevent shortfalls in the water budget. And that delegation, if it goes through an ordinance process and a public hearing, is lawful. Congress delegates authority every day to federal agencies to make decisions, to the President, to the Department of Justice, to the Department of Interior. The state legislature in the state of New Mexico delegates authority every day to state agencies to make decisions, to adopt rules, to write policies, and all of those things affect our lives as the governed citizens. Okay? And this conversation is no different than that. What the ordinance does, and we only have 2 or 3 of them that permit this, but it says, because we need to be more responsive, we need to be flexible, we need to be able to react in a more efficient manner to certain topics, then we don't have to go through the 60-day process of changing an ordinance. We can do it by a resolution, which means we can make it happen faster, more efficiently. It still meets the requirements of the Open Meetings Act, because we publish those agendas. They have to be final 24 hours in advance of the meeting. Our special meetings are called with a certain amount of notice. Our emergency meetings are called with a lesser amount of notice because it's an emergency. All of those things comply with the law. And so the black letter rule, which is an ordinance can only be amended by an ordinance, is true. It just doesn't apply all of the time, just like all of these other examples. And so I encourage people to be willing to stop and think about a topic, really understand what it is we're dealing with, why. The question shouldn't be, you shouldn't do it by resolution. The question should be, well, why would it be smart to do this by resolution instead of ordinance? Why would that be intelligent and efficient and more responsive to our citizens? And then if you like that idea, speak in favor of it. If you don't like that idea, then speak against it. But that is an appropriate conversation about the topic instead of just throwing that mantra back at the wall every day. It's just going to bounce back at you because it is appropriate when the circumstances are right. And there are some circumstances, members of the council, if you came to me and you said, okay, we want the municipal judge to be able to amend by court order the fee structure in our municipal code of ordinances, I would really say, you really don't want to do that. Because it doesn't provide the kind of notice and the kind of due process that we as Americans have come to expect. But there are a host of topics where it really makes sense to do these things in a way that is more efficient, that is more streamlined. You just have to think about what is the topic that we're dealing with, why might it be a good idea this time, and why might it not? Because the mantra doesn't apply across the board every time, and what we're doing is we're just beating our heads against the wall, and we never get to inform the conversation or discuss it thoughtfully and intelligently and make a good decision on whatever the topic might be. Mr. Mayor, I have drafted a response to FOG. It follows the analysis that I've expressed in this meeting tonight. And that will be going out on the law firm's letterhead within the next day or so. But that's really where we are on this subject. It's not going to be right in every circumstance. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, on the council, you guys have plenary authority to say, well, this is a circumstance where we like that efficiency, and this one is one where we don't. There's no rule that says if you do it by resolution on one topic, you have to do it on every topic. But you just have to decide what makes sense, what's smart, what really allows us to be efficient and appropriate as we react and are flexible in dealing with. And Lord knows, after Little Bear, we know we have a myriad of issues facing us as a community. So that flexibility becomes an important tool.
All right, thank you, Mr. Commissioner. I've got